I looked at the test results and then at the boy sleeping peacefully. So you're the child of my wife and my own father. I am Nathan Callahan. Location, Savannah, Georgia. I always thought I was a good brother. No, scratch that I was the only decent person in the entire Callahan family. I first held Ethan when he was just a few hours old. His body was small, fragile, red, like something half-formed. My mother called him a blessing from a distant cousin who passed too soon. Your father agreed to take him in, she said. It's the right thing to do. My father didn't say much. He never did. He just stood by the fireplace, nodded once, and went back into his study as if adopting a child was no different from ordering new drapes. I was 20, then Ethan became my shadow, my responsibility, my redemption. Over the years, I taught him how to ride a bike down the cracked sidewalks of Savannah, how to punch a bully without getting caught, how to lie with a straight face. He was a quiet boy, always watching, always mimicking. He looked a lot like me, too much, actually. Same narrow eyes, same jawline, same crooked little grin when he was annoyed. Sometimes he even looked like my father, especially when he was angry, but I pushed the thought away. He was family, and family, no matter how flawed, stays together. That's what we were raised to believe. That's what James Callahan, my father, repeated like gospel. Ethan called me Nate. Never brother, never dad, just Nate. He cried when Mom passed. She'd been the glue holding us together. And when cancer took her, something in the house went hollow. My father didn't shed a single tear. Ethan mourned like he lost his own mother. Maybe he had. As Ethan grew older, I took him with me to the construction sites I managed. Let him watch deals get made. Let him see how men lie with smiles and steal with contracts. By 16, he had a desk in my office. By 18, he had real responsibilities. I didn't have children of my own. Amanda, my wife, she had 2 miscarriages. The doctors said we could try IVF, but she shut down emotionally, grew distant. Cold Ethan was the only constant. Then, one evening, I came home early from a business trip to Atlanta. The house was quiet, except for voices coming from the living room, low, tense. Familiar, I stopped in the hallway. The door was cracked open, just enough. I can't keep living like this, Amanda said, her voice shaking. You should be grateful, my father snapped. If I hadn't pulled you out of that trailer park, you'd still be working night shifts at that dive bar. You think this was charity, she spat. You ruined my life and made me live it as the wife of your son. You think Ethan will never find out? My stomach dropped. My feet froze. You keep your voice down, he growled. He can never know. I stepped back slowly, like a man retreating from the edge of a cliff. I didn't confront them, didn't scream, didn't open that door. I just walked upstairs into the guest bedroom, locked the door, sat in the dark. That night, I didn't sleep. A week later, I broke into my father's study. He'd always kept it locked, but I knew where the spare key was hidden, taped under the desk drawer, behind a false panel. I opened the bottom cabinet. Inside was a faded yellow envelope, written in my father's tight, slanted handwriting. Test results, Ethan. I hesitated, then opened it. Inside was a paternity test, the kind you pay cash for to keep off the records, and the bottom line, printed in bold, paternity probability, 99.99%. Alleged, father, James W. Callahan. Child, Ethan Callahan. Reader, me, Nathan Callahan. Brother, father. Figure son of the man who slept with my wife. I looked down at the boy I'd raised, asleep on the couch, unaware of the blood war boiling beneath our roof. He wasn't just my brother. He was the living proof of my family's betrayal. And from that moment, I knew two things. I would never let him know the truth. But they, Amanda and my father, would pay for it, slowly, silently, brutally. The next morning, everything felt wrong. The kitchen smelled like coffee, bacon, and betrayal. Amanda was humming softly while flipping pancakes. She looked over her shoulder when I walked in, gave me a tired smile. "You're up early." I stared at her for a moment. She still wore the robe I bought her for our 7th anniversary, ivory silk clean, untouched. Unlike her, I sat down at the table, opposite Ethan, who was scrolling through his phone. He looked up and grinned. "Morning, Nate." I nodded. He was wearing my old college sweatshirt, slightly too big on him now. The irony made my stomach turn. They say, when your world collapses, it doesn't come down all at once. It peels away quietly, like wallpaper, curling at the edges until the wall underneath is exposed, ugly, cracked, rotting. I didn't rage, didn't scream, didn't burn the house down. Instead, I began to investigate. That afternoon, I took a drive. Not to clear my head. No, that was a luxury I no longer had. I drove downtown to a storage facility I hadn't visited in nearly 15 years. Unit 112, my mother's. She had kept a storage locker for personal things. Always locked, always private. After her death, I hadn't touched it. I'd paid the fee out of guilt, year after year. Maybe she knew, I thought. Maybe she saw everything before anyone else did. Inside, dust hung in the air, like secrets. There were boxes, old journals, a music box, and at the bottom of a plastic crate, sealed in a zippered pouch, a set of letters. One envelope caught my eye. No address, just a name, Amanda. I opened it. "James said you'd come around eventually, that you were too young to understand what he offered." Maybe that's true, but if this baby turns out to be his, not Nathan's, you need to know what that means for all of us. I won't let my son raise his father's bastard without knowing I won't. M. The handwriting was unmistakable. It was my mother's. So she knew. She had warned Amanda, maybe even confronted her, but Amanda must have convinced her it wasn't true. Or perhaps she begged. Perhaps she lied. Either way, my mother died with that secret buried, locked inside this godforsaken metal box. I stood there in the silence, letter trembling in my hand, heart pounding like a war drum. That was the moment I stopped being the man I had been for 40 years. That was the moment I became something else. When I got home, Amanda was in the living room watching TV. I dropped the letter on her lap. She didn't say a word for a full minute. Then slowly, she looked up. "You went through her things," she said, voice calm, calculated. "You lied to her, to me, for 2 decades. You don't understand." "No," I cut in. "I understand everything now." I walked away before she could speak again. I didn't want her excuses. I didn't want her tears. I wanted silence. Because in silence, plans grow. That night, I sat in the dark on the back porch, watching the storm roll in from the east. Ethan came out and sat next to me. He handed me a beer. "You okay?" he asked. His eyes, so familiar, yet now so alien, searched mine for an answer. I wondered if he saw anything different in me, if he felt the Cold War building beneath my skin. "Yeah," I said, "just a long week." He nodded, took a sip, and leaned back in the chair. That boy had no idea he was born from a betrayal. and no idea that I'd already begun building a noose for two people he loved most in this world. The next morning, I rewrote my will. I signed over 51% of my shares in the Callahan Group to Ethan. Amanda would see it as forgiveness. My father would see it as weakness. Neither of them would realize I was handing him a throne made of daggers. The morning Amanda found out I'd given Ethan controlling shares in the company, she cried. Not the messy, mascara-smearing sobs she used to perform when she wanted to distract me. This time, her tears were real because she thought she'd won. She hugged me like a woman forgiven. She kissed my cheek like a wife redeemed, and she whispered, "Thank you, Nate. I swear we can fix everything now." But there was nothing to fix, only debts to be paid. I started treating Ethan like my successor, my little brother turned future CEO. The board was skeptical, but I backed him publicly at company dinners. I praised his instincts at quarterly meetings. I let him present the numbers, even the ones he didn't prepare. He lapped it up like a loyal pup. My father stayed silent. That silence told me everything. He was worried. Good, I went back to the study that week, not my father's, mine. In a locked cabinet, I kept an old spiral notebook, the one Amanda used during her pregnancy. I hadn't looked at it in years. I didn't need to. Ethan wasn't my son. I had buried that pain long ago, or so I thought, but something drew me to it now. The appointment logs were still there, OB/GYN visits, ultrasound dates. One entry caught my eye. Conceived around March 12th. I pulled out my old travel calendar. In March of that year, I'd been in Chicago on business. For 9 straight days, Amanda had stayed home. With my father, I went numb. 20 years of lies. And I still needed more proof. No, I didn't. I just needed to feel it. Every shard of betrayal. Let it cut me clean, so I'd never question what I was about to do. That night, I invited my father to dinner. He arrived late as usual, wore the same navy blazer he always wore when he needed to remind people of his authority. We sat outside, candlelight red wine, steak grilled just right. "Why the celebration?" he asked. "I'm giving Ethan full executive power," I said, sipping calmly. "He'll be running the company by next quarter. I'll step into a board advisory role." He raised a brow. "You're serious?" "I am," he chuckled. "You've always been a sentimental fool." "No," I said, "not anymore." He tilted his head, narrowed his eyes. "You know, don't you?" There it was. Not a denial, not a defense. Just confirmation. I didn't flinch, didn't blink. I know everything. He set down his fork. "So what now, Nathan? You think giving the boy power will make you feel better? He's still my blood." "Exactly," I said, leaning in. "That's why I'm giving it to him." He looked confused for a moment, then smiled. That smug, condescending smile he always wore when he thought he'd won. But this time, it wasn't his to wear. Later that night, Amanda came into the bedroom while I was unbuttoning my shirt. "You really meant it," she said softly. "The shares, the speech, all of it." I didn't look at her. "Yes," I replied. She came closer, touched my shoulder. "You're the man I fell in love with again." I turned to face her. "No, Amanda. That man is dead." She froze, and in that pause, I knew the first domino had fallen. She thought I was building a legacy. She didn't see that I was constructing a guillotine, with her name and my father's etched on the blade. And Ethan? He was the one who'd unknowingly pulled the lever. There's an art to revenge. It's not rage, not chaos, not fire and screaming. It's restraint, precision. A blade that slides between the ribs so smoothly they never realize they've been stabbed, until they try to breathe. That's what I was building. Not justice, not healing, just pain. Cold, deliberate, surgical. And it had to begin with Ethan. I started grooming him for the public photo shoots, interviews, speaking engagements. I made sure people saw us together, me as the proud older brother, him as the bright successor. Behind the scenes, I handed him documents he barely read and deals he didn't understand. He was young, eager, desperate to prove himself. Perfect. "Why now?" he asked me one night as we sat in the boardroom after hours. "You're ready," I said. "You're not a kid anymore." He smiled. That wide, grateful grin he always had when I praised him. I wondered how it would change when he found out who he really was. I wondered if it would still be my smile or his father's. Meanwhile, Amanda grew bold. She started dressing differently, brighter colors, red lipstick again. She started calling me Nate, like she used to, touching my hand when we passed each other in the hallway. I didn't respond, didn't reject. I let her play the role, let her believe I was thawing. That's the thing about liars. They're always the easiest to fool. But the biggest lie was still sitting in our family's vault. A locked drawer in my father's study, the one I had never opened. Until now, I waited until he was out of town. Palm Beach, golfing with the same crooked bastards he'd done deals with for 30 years. The key was taped to the underside of a desk drawer, just like mine. Inside the drawer were old papers, land deeds, offshore account info, and a USB drive. I plugged it in. There was only one file, a video. It was security footage, grainy time-stamped from 20 years ago. A hospital room, Amanda pregnant, lying in bed. My father standing beside her, holding her hand. She looked scared. He leaned down and said something into her ear. She nodded, then cried. He kissed her forehead. That's when I realized she hadn't just betrayed me, she'd been owned. He had groomed her, controlled her, bent her to his will, long before I ever met her. My blood turned to ice. This wasn't a love triangle. It was a power game. I was just collateral. I copied the video to a second drive, labeled it, locked it away. That night, I sat across from Amanda in the dining room, candlelit, calm, intimate. "Do you remember the hospital room?" I asked. Her fork paused mid-air. "What room?" "The one where you gave birth, where my father kissed your forehead." She went still. "I saw the footage," I said. She dropped the fork. She didn't cry. She didn't plead. She just whispered, "I didn't have a choice." I leaned forward, voice quiet. "Neither do you now." Because next week, she'd sign a revised will, and the week after, Ethan would unknowingly sign the paper that gave me full legal control over everything, just before I gave him the throne. All of it was lining up, and none of them knew that I was turning this family into an empire. Just so I could burn it down from the top. Ethan didn't notice when the lawyers came. He was too busy prepping for his first solo investor presentation, pacing the office like a lion in a suit 2 sizes too big for his ambition. Amanda didn't question the documents I asked her to sign, either. "A tax structure adjustment," I told her. She smiled, signed, and poured me coffee. I smiled back. People think revenge is about confrontation, but I've learned the real power lies in compliance. Getting your enemies to help write their own endings. The new will was clean, elegant, ironclad. Amanda forfeited all rights to the Callahan Group in the event of separation or death. Ethan was named heir to my estate, but with a trigger clause. If at any time the inheritance is legally disputed, full control defaults to the trustee. And the trustee was me. I watched Ethan rehearse in the mirror that week. He stood straighter now, smiled more easily, even wore his hair slicked back like I used to. He was becoming me. That was the point. You can't destroy a legacy from the outside. You have to grow it first, feed it, let it bloom, then cut the root where it hurts most. The investor presentation went well, better than I expected. The room applauded, Ethan beamed, Amanda cried. Again. My father didn't clap. Afterward, at the reception, I pulled Ethan aside. "I'm proud of you," I said. He looked stunned. "Really?" I nodded. "You're ready. I'll be stepping back soon." He swallowed hard, emotion crawling up his throat. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll protect what we built." He didn't hesitate. "I will." That was the last time he told me the truth. Later that night, Amanda came to my study. She looked tired, drained. "I know you know," she said. "I do. But you still gave him everything." I looked at her long and hard. "No," I said. "I gave him responsibility, the weight of it, the risk, the empire." "And what did you keep?" "My leverage." 2 days later, I made a quiet phone call to a private investigator I'd worked with years ago. I gave him a simple instruction. Follow Ethan, track all digital activity, especially contact with James Callahan. I needed to know when my father would strike, because he always did. Always a week passed, then 2, then 3. Ethan continued acting the part. Smooth, polished, too polished. The PI sent me an encrypted file. Inside, 1 burner phone, 4 calls logged, to a number registered to a shell company in Florida, linked to my father's offshore accounts. I stared at the screen for a long time, then leaned back in my chair and laughed softly, bitterly. Ethan wasn't just being groomed, he was already sold. I gave him the throne, but he had already pledged loyalty to the king I was planning to kill. They thought I was stepping aside. They didn't realize I was about to pull the floor out from under both of them. And this time, there'd be no recovery. I called a board meeting, emergency session, confidential agenda, 8 men in suits, 2 women in blazers. My name on the plaque, at the head of the table. For the last time, Ethan sat beside me, smiling like a man being knighted. He thought this was the official passing of the crown. He didn't know I had already melted it into a bullet. I opened the meeting calmly, with numbers, growth projections, merger rumors. Then I clicked the remote. A new slide appeared on the screen. Unauthorized financial activity, last 60 days line items, shell payments, off-the-books transfers. The board murmured. Ethan leaned forward. "What is this?" I didn't answer, just clicked again. Slide 2, a phone log. 4 calls, all to Ryland Corporation, a known proxy for offshore laundering. The name beneath the call history, Ethan Callahan. The room went silent. "What the hell is this?" Ethan asked, standing up. I finally looked at him. "I gave you trust," I said evenly. "You gave it to someone else." Who even tracked this? You're spying on me?" "No," I said. "I was watching him." Then I pressed one last button. A video filled the screen, grainy footage. Ethan on a call in the garage, late at night. His voice, "Yeah, he's stepping down soon. Once I'm in, we'll restructure and push him out officially. My father's behind it. Just tell him I'm on board." The board erupted. Confusion. Questions. Accusations. Ethan looked at me like he didn't recognize me, like I wasn't the man who raised him. "You set me up," he whispered. "No," I said, standing. "I let you show yourself." Amanda burst into the boardroom 10 minutes later. She'd heard. She went to Ethan, shielded him with her arms. "He's just a kid. He didn't mean—" "He's 20 and a board member," I interrupted. "He signed fiduciary documents. Ignorance is no defense." She turned to me, eyes wild. "You used him. You built him into this." "I built him into a man," I said. "He chose to become my father." That night, I filed formal charges of internal conspiracy and breach of fiduciary trust. It was all clean, all legal, and all irreversible. Amanda didn't come home. Ethan didn't call. My father didn't speak. But the next morning, The headline hit: Callahan Group suspends CEO-elect amid fraud probe family drama rocks Georgia business empire. I stood on the balcony, coffee in hand, watching reporters circle the gates. I didn't smile. I didn't cheer. This wasn't the victory. This was just the burial. Inside my desk drawer, I placed 3 envelopes. For Amanda, sealed divorce, no settlement. For Ethan, copy of the will, now void. For my father, a simple photo. The photo, Amanda, in a hospital bed, pregnant, him kissing her forehead. Me, watching from the hallway. He thought I didn't know then. He never realized I knew the whole time. My father requested a meeting. Not a phone call, not a lawyer, a face-to-face. He invited me to the country club, our old haunt. The same table we used to sit at when I was still trying to earn his respect. I chose a different venue. My house, my rules. He arrived wearing his favorite cufflinks, platinum, engraved with our initials, JC and NC. He looked thinner, older, more brittle, but the eyes were the same, sharp and hard, like frost on steel. He didn't sit, just stood in front of the fireplace, looking at me like I was still 12. "You destroyed him," he said. I leaned back in my chair. "No, he destroyed himself. I just handed him the mirror." He walked over, slowly. "You think you're a man because you orchestrated this circus." "No," I said. "I think I'm a man because I didn't kill you when I found out." He flinched, subtle, but I saw it. "You raised him like a son," he said. "So what does that make you now?" "Free," I said. I tossed the envelope onto the table. The photo slid halfway out. He saw it. His face turned pale. Then he laughed. "You had this all along? 20 years. Why didn't you use it sooner?" I stood. "Because I wanted you to build the castle brick by brick, just so I could bring it down while you were still inside." His voice dropped low. "He's your brother. He's your son. He's our blood." I looked him dead in the eye. "That's the difference between us, James. You see blood as leverage. I see it as rot." He walked to the bar, poured himself a drink. His hand shook. He didn't try to deny anything now. The performance was over. "Tell me what you want," he said. I smiled for the first time that night. I already took it. He downed the whiskey in one swallow, then dropped the glass onto the rug. "I built all this, and I dismantled it, piece by piece, with your tools. You think you've won?" "I don't believe in winning," I said, "only in endings." That night, I filed a motion with the board to permanently strip James Callahan of emeritus status, voting rights, and all executive privileges. A week later, the vote passed. Unanimously, he no longer existed on paper. Not as a founder, not as a father, not as a man. Amanda filed for divorce. Privately, without contest, she signed the prenup again. This time, with nothing to gain. She sent a message. "He won't forgive you." I didn't reply. She wasn't wrong, but forgiveness was never the point. At midnight, I went down to the basement, pulled out a dusty box I hadn't touched in years. Inside, my mother's keepsakes, her will, and a journal entry I'd never read until that moment. "Nathan is stronger than he knows. If the truth ever comes out, I pray he chooses dignity over rage. But if he can't, if he becomes like James, then I pray he burns them all." I closed the book and whispered, "You got your prayer, Mom." I did both. The house was quiet again. No voices echoing through the halls, no footsteps behind me, no fake laughter at the dinner table. Just the sound of an empire hollowing itself out. I liked it that way. Amanda sent a letter, not an email, not a call, a single sheet of paper in a cream envelope with my name written in her old handwriting. The same cursive she used to practice when we were engaged. "You took everything. I don't blame you. but he's still just a boy. If there's anything left of the man who raised him, don't let this destroy him too." She signed it, "Amanda, not your enemy anymore." She was wrong. She'd never been the enemy. She was just the weapon. Ethan disappeared after the scandal broke. No word, no phone calls. His bank accounts were frozen. The board cut off his access. PR scrubbed his name from our website. He was no longer a person in the corporate world, just a cautionary tale. But I knew where he was. I paid the same investigator to keep an eye on him. He'd rented a cabin 3 hours north, near the Blue Ridge foothills, a place we used to go fishing. I decided to visit. He didn't answer the door when I knocked, but I knew he saw me through the curtains. I waited. 5 minutes 10. Then slowly, the door creaked open. He looked like hell. Unshaven eyes. Red hoodie stained. Nothing like the confident heir who once stood in my boardroom. "You here to finish the job?" he asked. "No," I said. "That part's done." He stepped aside. The cabin was exactly how I remembered it. Same rusted heater, same dusty board games stacked by the fireplace. He sat on the couch, hunched forward. "I didn't know the full story," he said. "I swear." "You didn't have to. You just had to ask the right questions." I trusted him. He said you were stepping down, that you were weak. I smiled faintly. That's what he always says about people he can't control. We sat in silence for a long time. Then he asked the question I'd been waiting for. "Who am I really?" I pulled a folded document from my coat, set it on the table. DNA test, birth certificate, a copy of the video. He read it slowly, then didn't speak for nearly 5 minutes. He just looked at the fire eyes, hollow. "I wish you never told me," he finally whispered. I stood. "You needed to know who you came from." "I don't care who I came from," he snapped. "I care who raised me." I froze. He looked up at me, tears falling, rage cracking through. "I didn't ask to be your pawn, or his son, or her mistake." "You weren't a mistake," I said softly. "You were just a consequence." He laughed, a bitter, broken sound. "You think that makes it better?" "No," I replied. "It makes it real." I left the documents on the table, turned toward the door. "Ethan," I said quietly, "everything I gave you, I'd take it all back. Not for revenge, not for pride." He looked at me. "But for one more night, where I could believe you were really my little brother." As I walked out, he didn't follow, didn't ask me to stay, didn't say goodbye. But the next day, I got a message. No words, just a photo. The fireplace in the cabin, burning and in the flames. The birth certificate. He'd burned the truth. Now we were even, but we'd never be family again. I stayed away from the city for a while. Board meetings still happened, lawyers still called stocks, still ticked, but I let it all run on autopilot. The storm was over, and all that was left was silence. I walked through the house alone. Rooms that once held voices now only held shadows. Amanda's perfume still lingered in the master bathroom. Ethan's sneakers still sat by the back door, like he might come home from a run any minute. But no one was coming back. I had won. And yet, for the first time, I didn't know what I'd won for. I stood in the hallway outside my mother's old bedroom. I hadn't opened the door since she died. Even after the funeral, even after we boxed up everything else. This room stayed locked. Not by key, by fear. I turned the knob. The air smelled like old books and lavender, like time had folded itself into the carpet and refused to move on. I sat on her bed and cried. Not the controlled, strategic grief I'd perfected over the years. The real kind, the broken kind. There was a photo on her dresser, one I hadn't remembered me. 10 years old, mom in the garden, sun hat tilted, dad in the background, arms crossed. Even in still images, He looked like a man who couldn't let go of power. But my mother, she looked happy. Maybe she had hope once. Maybe she believed we could be better. I found another letter tucked behind the frame. Her handwriting. Fragile. If Nathan ever finds this, please tell him I forgive him for whatever he's done, because I know him and I know he only destroys what hurts him first. That night, I sat on the porch and lit a cigar I'd been saving for 20 years. Not for celebration, for ending. Amanda sent one final message. You can keep the house, but you'll never fill it again. She wasn't wrong. I found Ethan's name trending again the next morning. Not for scandal, for a scholarship. He donated what was left of his trust fund to a non-profit in his birth mother's name. Amanda's, not mine, not James's. He'd rewritten his own bloodline, cut me out clean. Maybe he was right to. I called the non-profit anonymously, made a donation, 10 times the amount Ethan had given, asked that it be listed under a brother who never stopped watching. Then I hung up. For the first time in my life, I did something with no plan, no angle, no need to win. Just loss, just love, rotted through. A year passed. Not in fire and fury, but in small, quiet days. I watched the seasons change from the same porch where Ethan once handed me a beer, still calling me Nate, still thinking I was just his older brother. I had rebuilt the company, restored its name, rebranded it with a new slogan, built on truth. The board ate it up, investors came back, the world forgot the scandal. But I didn't. I thought about reaching out to Amanda, to Ethan, hell, even to my father. If he was still alive, he wasn't stroke alone, no funeral. But I never did. Some wounds only scar when you stop touching them. On a Tuesday morning in spring, I found a letter in the mailbox. No return address, just my name in handwriting I didn't recognize. Inside, Nate. I burned the papers, but I couldn't burn you. You were my brother, even if you weren't supposed to be. What you did hurt, but what you gave me, that's something I'm still trying to live up to. I'm not coming back, but I'm not running anymore either. Thank you for the man you were, and the man you forced me to become, Ethan. I read it 3 times, then I folded it and placed it next to my mother's journal, where the final piece of our family's story belonged. Later that week, I visited the graveyard on River Street, the one where my mother was buried, and now James too. A simple plaque. No flowers, no visitors. I brought nothing with me, just stood there between them. The woman who raised me, and the man who broke everything she built. I did what you couldn't, I said softly. I fought back. A breeze moved through the trees. It didn't feel like peace, but it wasn't war anymore, either. I turned to leave. At the gate, I saw a boy, no older than 10, playing with a model airplane. His father called him, and he ran to him without hesitation. I watched them walk away together, and for the first time, I didn't envy it, didn't ache for it. I just watched. They say, revenge is a fire that consumes everything in its path. But sometimes, if you burn it just right, what's left is something cleaner, something honest, something you can finally live with, even if it's a life you have to live alone.